So let's talk about the Hexadine. We already have the Sorkadine on the channel. Today we're going to be building the Hexadine. And the Hexadine is just amazing because it allows you to be a Dark Paladin. That is going to use one of the strongest mechanics that you have in the game, which is darkness. With the Warlock, a lot of people get triggered by this thing. This thing is actually banned from quite a lot of D&D games, depending on your dungeon master and whatnots. But hey, it's amazing. Now we're going to have to make a little bit of concessions. A lot of people like to go with two-handing with their paladins. I don't really like to go with two-handing with my paladins that much, and we'll go into a little bit more of a detail about that thing a little bit later on video when we are speaking about leveling of our paladin. But yeah, this is actually going to be quite nasty, amazing, and it's also going to allow you to solo quite a lot of situations. And since you are a very charismatic character, you can solo the game with this character if you wanted to. As for your socials, you are still going to be the face of the party, so you're not going to have anyone to be in front of them speaking for you, because you are the one that is going to be speaking. And since the Warlock and the Paladin both rely on their spells usage for our charisma, it's just going to be amazing. So let's begin first with the leveling. For this purpose, I'm going to be using but like always, the race, if you're just making your character for the first time, it's always going to be different depending on your needs that you have for your racials and whatnot. At the end of the day, like I always say, choose the race that you want to take. I'm taking, well, right here, right now, purely for cosmetic purposes, and also because it kind of fits his role-playing playstyle. It's nice to have him still as a Hexadine because he's natively a Warlock, so he has already made a pact with the devil, so that is something that is always nice. And then we're going to have the Oath of Vengeance, mainly because of role-playing purposes. If you want to be with the Oath of Devotions, Oath of the Ancients, it's not going to make that much sense, but it's also not going to be impossible. It's not going to be something that you're not going to want to do. Now, the stat distribution. There's just going to be two single stats that are going to be important to us, and that is going to be Constitution to be able to maintain the concentration, and also Charisma to be able to increase your attack rolls and damage rolls as well, both for your melee weapon that you are going to have, and also for your Eldritch incantations. Now the rest of them, we are just going to have them as they are right now, not to have any more diminishing returns into our saving throws and whatnot. Dexterity, ideally, we would want to have that thing a little bit higher for the initiative, but at the end of the day, we're not going to get hit that much with this character. The thing is that you need to start the combat with this guy to immediately cast your darkness. So ideally, this is how your stat allocation is going to be. When it comes to the skill proficiencies, you have athletics, and also you have intimidation and persuasion, and those are socials that a paladin should always have, so that is always nice. Now when it comes to level 2, there's actually a little bit of a concession that you want to make right here. You can either start building multi-classing into a Warlock or going into a Paladin. One is not better than the other. The things that are going to happen right here is that the Warlock is going to give you access faster to your Eldritch Blast and to your Darkness sooner, but the Paladin is going to give you the fighting capabilities of a fighter, and it's also going to increase a little bit better your smites and whatnots. So that being said, yeah, like I said, there is no ideal path to take, although I do like to go 5 levels real soon into the Paladin, because the Paladin is always an amazing choice, and that is going to give you access to the extra attack. So that is what I am going to be doing right here. Now this is where you need to make another concession. Like I was telling you earlier, I prefer the one-handed Paladin rather than the Great Weapon Fighter Paladin. The Great Weapon Fighter Paladin is not going to give you that much in regards of combat capabilities, in opposite to the one-handed Paladin, one-handed shield Paladin. The reason for that being is that from your main damage is going to be coming from your smites. Your smites are going to be upcasted. That is where your main damage is going to be coming. If you were a fighter, like for example, sure, you want to get a little bit more damage, but you're not. Your damage is really going to be coming. Most of the cases you're going to be using smites. When you're not going to be using smites, you're going to be using your Eldritch incantations. So great weapon fighting is a little bit redundant, and also great weapon fighting is going to give you a little bit of a diminishing returns when your ability scores. That being said, this is a concession that you need to make. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. This is just my personal opinion. This is how I'm going to build this guy, because I think that this is a little bit better, but you're free to also go for great weapon fighting. But I'm going to be going for either protection, well, defense or dueling, depending on what you want. For dueling, you're going to be using scimitars or rapiers and whatnot. So if you want to be using long swords, then might as well take the defense. And yeah, I'm going to be going with dueling because I am going to be using rapiers with this character. The spells are really not going to be important. You're not going to be using your Paladin spells, mainly because most of them, Shield of Fate, Bless, and Compel Duel and whatnot, they all require concentration. You're not going to be using concentration for anything else other than your darkness, so might as well change some of those for your different kind of smites that you have out there. Just to have in mind that all of those concentration spells, you're not going to be using them. At level 4 of our Paladin, this is where we are going to receive our first feat. And there are two things that you want to do depending on how you are building your character. You want to be able to sustain your darkness a little bit better, or you want to deal more damage. Ideally, I like to go with Warcaster because we already have enough damage as it is. So that is how I like to do. This is going to be at level 4 from our Paladin. At level 5, this is where we are going to be getting our first extra attack. A little bit more of spells and the oath spells, depending on the oath that you took. If you went with the Vengeance Paladin, you are going to get a Misty Step, which is always amazing. It's an amazing thing to be able to be moving throughout the battlefield. Now, this is when I like to multi-class into a Warlock. And the real things, you can either take the Fiend or the Great Old One. The Great Old One is going to frighten the enemies whenever you deal critical hits, and the Fiend is going to give you Armors of Agathis and Dark One's Blessing, which is going to give you temporary hit points whenever you kill creatures. So it's really up to your personal preference. A lot of people is going to go for the Great Old One, the Fiend, or whatnot. And the cantrips, the only one thing that you want to have as a cantrip, as a base, is going to be Eldritch Blast. Mage Hand is always a nice thing that you can use. And also, if you go with the Great Old One, you can still take the Armor of Agathis, so that is always nice. And it is not constant; it doesn't require concentration, so that is always nice as well. And also a little bit of a damage with darkness, with Hellish Rebuke. But yeah. At level 2, you are going to gain your Eldritch Invocations and also a little bit of an extra spell. We don't care about that, but we do care about the Agonizing Blast to add our Charisma modifier to your Eldritch Invocations. And then we're going to use Devil's Sight to be able to see in the darkness. At level 3 from your Warlock, this is where you're going to receive your new spell, which is going to be your Darkness, and also the Pact Boon, which is going to be the Pact of the Blade, to be able to add your Charisma modifier to your weapon. Now, there are some things that you need to have in mind if you go with the low-level Strength Paladin. I would advise for you to do some respect around here and there. Level 7, you are going to reach level 7 in the first act of the game, but it's going to take quite a while. And if you take 10 Strength, you're going to be whiffing quite a little bit of attacks, so I advise for you to go with a little bit Strength first. Take away the points that you have into your intelligence and wisdom and dexterity, pop them into strength, and once you get to this point, you can respec into this paladin that we have right now. And thanks to the bind pack weapon, this is where we're going to be able to have access to adding our charisma modifier to our weapon. The new cantrips, they are really irrelevant, nothing really important. Also the spells that you have right here. They are not important. We're not going to be using spell slots. Those spell slots, we want them for our smites. What it is going to be quite important is going to be your ability improvement to raise your charisma to 18. Later on Act 3 of the game, we're going to raise that bad boy to 20, which is going to be amazing. And this is going to give you, at level 5, you are going to get the Deepened Pact. And what this does is that it gives you an extra attack whenever you have a bound weapon. And this stacks with the extra attack that you have from your Paladin level 5. So at level 10, if we proceed with our Paladin leveling, this is what you are going to get. And also you get some extra little spells. Like I said, spells are really not important. We're not going to be using spells, we're going to be using our smites. And then right here, the Eldritch invocations that you have is up to your personal preference. At the end of the day, the only thing that we want is going to be Devil's Sights and Agonizing Blast. So anything else that there are some quite amazing things that you can take right here, but it's up to your personal preference. Beast speaks, invocations speak with animals, it's always nice. Now we're going to get our level 6 right here from our Warlock, and we're not going to receive anything really important right now. And at this point we are just going to be leveling the rest of the points that we have for our Paladin right here. We're going to raise our Paladin to level 5 to get the extra attack. Then with a hasted character, this guy could potentially deal 6 attacks in a single turn. And then at level 6 from our Paladin, which is going to be at level 12, we are going to receive our Aura Protection. And since we actually do have quite a lot of charisma, this bad boy is actually going to give us quite a nice things. Now this is the skeleton of the builds. This is the skeleton of how you're going to level up the things that you are going to gain. I like to go with 6 and 6, but you are going to have to make some concessions. Do you want to get extra attacks faster? There's a whole bunch. What I want for you to understand, especially if you're a beginner player, you can change the route depending on your playstyle and what you want to get earlier than the rest of the things, but this is how the Paladin is going to look at the end of the game. Now let's talk about the itemization that we are going to have with our Warlock and some changes that you can have right here. As for the armor, you are always going to have the highest plated armor that you can get. Armor class is going to be king right here. Just take whatever gives you the highest armor class possible, available, and whatnot. As for the weapons, we want to have the duelist prerogative. This is going to be linked in the video description now to get this thing. And this is just an amazing weapon for the kind of Paladin that we have right now, and it's going to allow us to use extra attacks with our extra actions. But in reality, when you are leveling up, just any one-handed weapon is going to cut the deal. It's going to basically do wonders for you. There's the Screaming Rapier right as well, so that one is in the video description as well. The shield, the thing that gives you the highest armor class. The one thing that it is actually going to be quite interesting is going to be the gloves. Whenever you are not going to be using the Helldusk gloves, we want things that give you damage rolls right here. These are going to give you 1d6 fire damage, but you can also take the Dark Justiciar, which are also linked in the video description, and they are going to give you dice of damage. We have the Strange Conduit Ring, which is going to give you 1d4 psychic damage when you are concentrated, and you're always concentrated in your darkness. Then we have the Killer Sweetheart, which is going to give you critical hits on demand, which combos like always with the Surgeon Subjugation Amulet that paralyzes enemies, humanoids, and whenever they are paralyzed, they are going to be receiving free critical damage. And then as for the boots, you have the Helldusk boots. You're going to get these bad boys on the Act 3 of the game. But another nice thing to have is going to be the Boots of Striding, because they are not, while you have concentration, you can get these bad boys in the first act of the game, and while you are concentrated, the enemy cannot knock you down. So if they want to have to make you pass the strength checks and to knock you down, that is something that is going to make your darkness disappear, so these guys are always nice as well. Now for the head, we want the Birthright. If you get something early on in the early stages of the game, then that is going to be up to your personal preference. Just to have in mind that as soon as you get to the Act 3 of the game, you are going to go look for the Birthright, which is going to give you a +2 to Charisma, up to a 22. We weren't able to reach that maximum 22, but as you can see right here, we do have 20, which is going to contribute to our damage and also to our Eldritch Blast incantations. Now, the gist of it, of the gameplay, is that you're always going to be casting darkness and you're always going to be using your smites. One very important thing that you need to do is ASAP whenever you reach, whenever you finished a rest, you're going to use your bind packed weapon, because this is what is going to give you the weapon that is going to be scaling its attack rolls and its damage rolls out of charisma. So it is very, very, very important that as soon as you get this thing, every time that you rest, you are going to be using this thing, because that is very important. This doesn't require concentration, so that is just free damage that you should always have. Other than that, how this thing is going to work is that as soon as you start combat, and ideally prior to starting combat, you're going to cast your darkness in front of the enemy. While you are in the darkness, the enemy has disadvantage against you, but you have advantage against the enemy. So anyone that is inside of the darkness, they are going to be basically dead, because they are not going to be able to do anything to you because of the high armor class that you have, thanks to your shields and thanks to your feats that you have. If the enemy manages to hit you, you're not going to lose your concentration, because you have somewhat of high constitution. That is why we want to have the constitution 16. And granted, there are quite some enemies that do have dark vision as well, but that is why I was telling you about how important it is to have high armor class. If you haste your character, that is going to give you an extra +2 to your armor class, giving you potential, once you reach the end game, potentially like 26 armor class, even 28 if you pair that up with Shield of Faith that another Paladin could give you. Your Sorkadin, for example, just a sorcerer or a cleric and whatnot. There's many ways of increasing your armor class a little bit better to survive, and just basically smite the hell out of everyone that is inside of the darkness. And then the enemies that are outside from the darkness, at that point everyone should be dead at that point, and you shouldn't have any more charges from your smites. But the enemies that are outside from the darkness, you can use your Eldritch Blasts to smite them, and you do have that extra bonus on your attack rolls and your damage rolls from your Eldritch Blasts, so you don't really need to get outside from the darkness to kill the rest of the enemies that are out there. And the Eldritch Incantations, the Eldritch Blasts, they are cantrips, so you don't have to be worrying about them being consuming resources. As for the resources for your smites, you are going to be able to recharge 2 of them after a short rest. One thing to have in mind, one very important thing as well, is that you have access, once you reach level 12, to 6 attacks instead of 4 when you are hasted, because you have extra attack from your Paladin, and also you have your extra attack from your bound weapon that you have on your Warlock. So that is basically how it works. If you like the content, so like and super appreciate it. No one told you today that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. I always think you got them gorgeous and beautiful people in this one. Have a beautiful day, and goodbye.